Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for an episode of Building Leaders Connect, a podcast by youth about life in Chicago.
Hello everyone, my name is Gabriela Esquivel and I will be your host today. In today's episode, we are going to be interviewing Christopher and Uriel about mental health.
As Gabby said, I am Christopher and I'm a student from Golden College Prep.
And my name is Uriel and I go to Benito Juarez.
Okay, so one of the first questions that I have for you guys, either or one of you guys could answer, is do you guys think... do you think people with mental illnesses are dangerous?
I would say it would depend on what kind of mental illness it is.
I guess I would have to agree with him. It depends on what kind of mental illness it is and like how, I wouldn't say severe, but how like, I guess how it affects them in the different ways that it affects them, because not everyone has the same, I guess, reaction kind of mentality towards everything.
So how could someone be dangerous? Like, what are some examples?
Like depression, if they're very depressed, they can be a danger to themselves because it can lead them to suicide or to maybe even harming others.
I guess I don't want to say any specific mental illnesses, but especially as of lately, we've been seeing a lot of I guess tragic events take place, and most of which are kind of assumed that they're a cause of like someone with a mental illness or something like that. I guess personally it does. Obviously, some people are going to actually have mental illnesses and have problems that led them to do that, and sometimes people just, I guess, say that, or they're convinced to say that so that they get a less harsher like sentence or something like that, or just not get into as much trouble as they would have otherwise. Mostly I guess shootings, or like at events, schools and stuff like that. I guess personally I don't have any experience with this, so I can't really say exactly how it would be, but I feel like sometimes it is actual mental illness and people do have problems, but sometimes maybe it's just we kind of live in a society where regardless of what you do, you kind of get fame and you kind of get attraction for anything. For example, there's a lot of especially on the internet, you hear a lot of stories of people who idolize the kids that from what was the school called? Oh, from Columbine. They idolize them. They see them as heroes instead of whatever people consider them. And some people do it as a joke, but some people do actually believe that they're good people or that they're misunderstood.
I would say in our society, usually the only people that get away with mental health issues in a scenario like that would be Caucasian people. Usually minorities are deemed as terrorists right away.
Okay, so another question that I have is, do you think being influenced by bad parents that you would be more prone to have a mental disorder?
I guess there are, in some cases, studies have been shown that like children who are abused like from very young sometimes do grow up and develop mental disorders and mental illnesses, and that is actually like it's a real problem. It happens fairly often. Especially with children, since they're fairly vulnerable and I guess just really young.
Do you think there's any way like we could stop it within like school maybe? Because I mean kids do spend most of their time in school. How do you think we could like solve the issue with school?
I'm not sure if there's any like I guess clear-cut way to be able to solve it directly at school, because for the most part, it's somewhat of a problem that happens at home, and if it's at school, then people, I guess, do tend to pay more attention to it and notice it.
Yeah, but I meant like how could we give like resources, I guess you would say, so like kids could feel comfortable enough to actually speak about their topics, speaking about their like their issues at home.
Well, I would say first off, schools can get a lot more counselors because there's not many very counselors at school at all. Like at my school, at most there's 2 counselors for about 500 children. And especially in public schools, they're much bigger than any other school, private schools, and they get funded by the state. And recently, most of them have been very underfunded, which leads to a shortage of teachers, special education teachers, and especially counselors, because for some reason I don't think people see how important counselors can be. So I would start off with implementing something that allows more counselors to get work at schools.
So last time in the last episode, I said that Illinois ranks 3rd in the nation when it comes to states with the highest dollar amount cut from mental health programs. Why do you think that?
Because people in power don't think it's that important, and usually when you're well off in almost every other area, you tend not to have as many problems, while other people that aren't well off at home usually have much more problems outside. They grow up in that sort of environment that allows them to grow into a person that isn't as stable in society. Our society views people as well off, but if you think you're much more well off than other people, it usually helps you. So if you think you are something, you most of the time become it. If you think you're a minority and you won't get out of your situation, you tend to stay there.
But I feel like that kind of mentality can sometimes be problematic, because then you have people who are considered well off and are considered to be at a good place, and then you hear about them, for example, with celebrities. One that comes to me is, like, for example, Robin Williams. People were very shocked when he committed suicide because they think he was well off, and he was a comedian, so everyone just assumed he was very happy. He was good, and then when that happened, everyone was kind of surprised. And I guess with everyone, sometimes if someone that's well off, we say that, well, they have the resources, they should be able to do it. If it's a minority, sometimes amongst us, we say that it's bad to talk about our mental health because it's just stereotypically seen as weak.
Or also another thing that's been going on is that when you talk about your mental like health, like people usually think like, oh, they need attention.
This also leads to what I say in society is how everybody has expectations for you, and when you can't fulfill those expectations, you don't feel like you're you, because you're not at the place that everybody wants you to be in. And when you're not there, everybody looks down at you or tells you, oh, you're not trying hard enough, or you're not the best that you could be, when in reality maybe you're just trying your hardest and can't get there.
So another statistic that I found was more than 90% of children who die by suicide have a mental health condition. Again, that's something pretty like big. It's 90% of the children have a mental health condition. Do you think that by knowing more of like signs we could prevent that, like signs of like mental health issues?
I guess just like the way that I kind of understood that, and like that question, or the way that I'm interpreting it, is that, like, I guess how would I guess making more people aware of mental illnesses and the symptoms that come along with some of those specific mental illnesses, how would that help us actually like prevent people from taking any drastic decisions, or like, I guess, avoiding getting help or something like that? And I guess my answer to that question would be like that, yeah, like raising awareness about that kind of stuff would very much help. I wouldn't say stop it, but prevent it from happening or getting as bad as it sometimes does.
making parents aware of mental health issues and their signs would be a great idea, but some parents are very closed-minded, and other parents might be too overprotective. So it can be a double-edged sword, I think. Some people might just judge their children more, while others might not let them do anything at all because they think the more they let them do, the more likely they are to do other things that they're not supposed to do. So I say that would be a double-edged sword at the moment.
If you see anybody with like signs that they're struggling with something, how would you help them?
I guess me personally, I would try to not directly like confront them about it, because that's never a really good idea with anything in general, but especially when it comes to talking about mental illness, because then they feel like they're being, I guess, attacked, or you're like judging them, or you think there's something wrong with them, and maybe that will discourage them from actually talking about it. So I would try to see if there's a way for them to bring it up and then from there talk about it.
So in the last episode as well, we also talked about how there were some ways of like calming down your stress, your anger, and stuff like that. So something I said was writing in a journal or in notes, because I personally use that and I think it's a great idea. Like, it really helps me. What are some suggestions you would give out to someone who is like dealing with stress or anger or sadness or anything like that?
I would recommend, first off, controlling your breathing. If you're stressed, usually you have a high heart rate, which doesn't allow you to think due to adrenaline. Once you do that, then I would recommend either eating something so you're not angry because you're hungry, or doing something that produces endorphins in your brain.
I know there are some like websites there's also a toll-free number that you can call for most mental illnesses, or I guess problems in general that you might have. So there's that, if you don't want to like talk to someone in person, or if you just don't like doing that, you can always do it anonymously through the internet or through text message.
Thank you for listening today to our podcast. Please visit gadshillcenter.org for more information about Building Leaders Connect and to find out how you can support our programs. Special thanks to Beatrice, Eduardo, Chris, Uriel, and the staff at Gads Hill Center for working on this podcast. I'm Gabby, and this is Building Leaders Connect.